Welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, where we talk about fitness, health, and anything to help you become the most optimal human beings. Let's dive into it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
How's it going, man?
Good. Talking about pain, inflammation, ibuprofen today. So we're covering a study that was done in 2022, at the end of 2022. The name, No Pain, No Gain, examining the influence of ibuprofen consumption on muscle hypertrophy. And I feel like we've covered this before, or at least to some degree. And as is with science, they're always changing their mind about what's working, what's not working, and all that kind of stuff. So ultimately, this is an article. And it's examining the impact of ibuprofen on muscle hypertrophy. And studies have shown that ibuprofen have differing effect on muscle hypertrophy. From the study, they're kind of saying that younger people, it does affect more, and then older people not as much. And the theory being that older people have more inflammation, like too much inflammation, and so that the ibuprofen can help when older people. And let me see if I have written down older.
Age,
I mean,
specifically?
what's that?
Like age specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I know the study went up to 80 years old, but I'm wondering if younger participants were labeled 18 to 35 and older participants were labeled 60 to 78. So when I refer to older and younger people, that's the age range there. So anyway, what this article is saying, the study is saying, is inflammation, too much inflammation, you take ibuprofen, could be helpful if you want to gain some muscle. And then it's saying if you're in that younger range where you tend to naturally have a little bit less inflammation and you take ibuprofen, it could be harmful to hypertrophy. And we've kind of talked about this stuff with antioxidants. Like, antioxidants are good. We know them as good, but too much or too many antioxidants, if you go crazy with it, it'll move you in the opposite direction if you want to go, because your body's inflammatory response to exercise is a part of your body's super compensation to getting better and improving. So you don't want to get in the way of those, but is it okay to take ibuprofen? And the ranges that they were looking at were 1,200 milligrams a day, or 400 milligrams a day, up to 1,200 milligrams per day. So if we're also looking at the different ranges, and I think 1,200 milligrams is right at the threshold of like what a Motrin bottle would say you're allowed to take. I think in the military, if you get hurt, I think they start you at 1,200 milligrams a day and tell you to take one every 4 hours. It's a military joke for anybody who has been given them. What are those pills? Like, are they 800 or 1,200? I think
They're 800.
Yeah,
800 is like the biggest pill you get, but it's like every 8 hours to take one or something.
They prescribe that for like everything. They're like, oh,
yeah.
Here you go. So anyway, talking about how this can affect hypertrophy and whether or not you should take ibuprofen, because I know things come up. People have injuries that they're wanting to take ibuprofen for. Maybe you get frequent headaches or whatever the case is. And is it going to be hurting your gains? I think is ultimately what we're going to discuss a little bit today. What do you think about this study, Joe?
I like to break down in age groups that the difference there, because as you said, we've talked about inflammation before and how, like, in general, inflammation can be a good thing, and if you need to mitigate it for any, whether it's short-term release or actual injury kind of thing, that's fine. But over time, if you're losing it too much, then it could be a bad thing. But I like that they distinguish between younger and older athletes, because and it makes complete sense, because younger athletes should have less inflammation and older athletes should have more. So the effects should be different. And for the most part, I'd probably say the older athletes are more than likely taking some sort of NSAID more often. But I think that's easy for the younger athletes, the trickle down to, for them to start doing it as well. Like, okay, well, I need to help this because this hurts, or breaking down my inflammation, help my inflammation some. But really, you might just be hurting the progress and the work that you're doing. It was kind of similar to the allergy one, the allergy med on I think it was on conditioning or something. and chronic use of allergy meds. So it's similar to that. I personally don't really take NSAIDs much anymore, especially ibuprofen, but that's more for the gut reasons, for small intestinal reasons. It has its own negative effects in that regard. So that's why I don't take them, and I try not to rely on things like that. I'll try to um, naturally take some either anti-inflammatories, antioxidants, certain well-rounded diet, as always. But it's cool to see that the differences, and I'd say the majority of our athletes are going to fall into the younger group or that ambiguous "which one am I" group.
Yeah, and I wanted to hit on
So
that for
just
a
think about
second,
that.
just so I'm clear. This study looked at 2 different studies, and of those studies, what they were really trying to look at was, the difference between ibuprofen, and they also wanted these studies to have, compare ibuprofen to a placebo, specifically on muscle hypertrophy, and so they only had 2 studies that they were looking at, and one study was for younger and one study was for older. So, that was just how this study worked. If you're like, "Well, I'm in the range of I'm 36 to 59," which could also be a lot of our listeners. There just wasn't a study there. So you just have to like that's what I'm trying to highlight, like the bigger takeaways here of like it seems like because we're looking when you look at extremes, you can kind of pull out um like a thread, right? And so it does seem that okay, if it's helpful for the older with more inflammation and it's not helpful for the younger with less inflammation, then we're probably not so worried consumed about we don't need to be so consumed about age. It's just inflammation. What's your existing level of inflammation, no matter your age? Because I do think it's wrong to say, hey, if you're 65, you probably have a ton of inflammation. Well, that could be true. I mean, what if you're taking really good care of your body, you have a really good diet, and your inflammation is like really low. So it really just has to do with your overall health and how much inflammation you have.
Yeah, and that's when it'll become a little bit more subjective to what you have going on. And they did say that 1,200 milligrams can help, and it was the one that either, depending on your age group, could or couldn't affect you. But down to 400 milligrams didn't go one way or the other for each age group. So if you do have some sort of injury, pain, or whatever, you can take 400, 600 milligrams. Granted, if you're an adult, 400 milligrams like is not going to do anything anyway. I think there's a minimum you have to take in order for it to actually have any effect. So whenever I need to take some, which is rare, but there's times where I still take some. I'll try and go on the lower end. So like even though I'm rated for probably 800, I probably try and only take like 600, just again for gut reasons. So as long as you're not chronically taking it, and if you're taking it because you actually have certain pains or issues, then don't overthink it. You can take it and it's fine, but it's just looking at more of long term, and if you really actually do need to take it, or if you're just taking it because like you heard a little bit or something.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. So it does seem like from this information that 400 milligrams per day seem to be fine. So if you do need to take it, doing what Joe is mentioning, maybe go on the lower end, um, and that should be fine. And we've talked about some of these things before, but I would never take an anti-inflammatory post exercise or because of exercise. So I just don't want to get in the way of the inflammatory responses that I know my body is naturally trying to go through. I would only take I mean, I'm like you, I never take ibuprofen. Like I don't ever take it. The only time I will take it is probably for a headache.
Hmm.
Um
Especially before bed.
yeah, just because like a headache can ruin my day. I don't ever really get headaches though either. You know what gives me a headache? Is if I take melatonin, which I don't
Huh.
take very often.
Interesting.
It started off small. It was like a small, like, "No, that's not that bad of a headache." Like, it kinda goes away at within an hour of waking up, and I don't take melatonin that often either. But then I took it this was a few weeks ago, and maybe I got a bad batch, but I took it once, and I woke up with a migraine, and I didn't even make the connection. I was like, probably not melatonin because I had taken melatonin before, and I didn't take anything for like 3 or 4 days, and I took melatonin again the next week or something, and again, migraine. So I took Motrin both of those days, which is like more than I've taken Motrin in like the last 3 years. Because like a legitimate migraine can like stop me in my tracks. Like I'm not able to do anything that day. And so I had to take Motrin in those cases, but Yeah, melatonin gives me migraines. Some
That
trivia
sucks.
there
I
for
take
you.
melatonin all the time. Like I need melatonin to a certain degree.
Yeah, no, I just have to live without it. And so yeah, I just stay away from everything now. And I don't, unless chemically induced, I don't really get headaches. And I used to get headaches. I used to have all that kind of stuff happen. But I think once you are pretty consistent with your nutrition and your hydration and exercise, a lot of those kind of things, like a headache, they're just not a very common occurrence. So that should be the goal. But I think the ultimate goal here from the study is lower your levels of inflammation. And how can we do that? Well, we can do that with uh, low intensity aerobic exercise. Anything blood flow related is going to help move blood and nutrients throughout your body. It will reduce inflammation. Having enough fruits and vegetables in your diet will help reduce inflammation. And getting enough sleep will help reduce inflammation, and getting enough water will help reduce inflammation. And I'm going after all the basic lifestyle guidelines here because that's where I think that you should try and reduce inflammation: fruits, vegetables, sleep, water, training, all those kind of things, and not sit here and be like, tart cherry can do it and turmeric can do it, because those things can. They're really powerful antioxidants that can lower inflammation. But I just don't think that you should get in this habitual use of anything to lower inflammation when your body's pretty good at lowering inflammation if you just give it all the things that it wants already.
Yeah, that's actually kind of where I wanted to steer it towards sort of what we do or what you do for when you actually do have some sort of pain injury, because like there's soreness, and then there's like when your tendons hurt, or you like maybe if it's kind of like a tennis elbow or your knee. I think you had some knee issues, just some pain. But we both had some back issues. That's more of like, for me it's like stretching. But you're going to train, but what are you going to do to mitigate that? I know a lot of people would maybe their first thought would be to take some ibuprofen and then like hit the gym before or after. um that is usually a couple steps down the road. So usually, you already mentioned it before, I'll start with blood flow. So anything that I can get moving to that area, if there is, um, like there was a time when I was doing rope climbs or something that was just it was just kind of different. If you're doing some sort of new motion, my elbows were killing me. Like it was like a tennis elbow situation that just really really hurt, especially to extend. So blood flow for that, it's kind of weird to get blood flow there, but like flossing, like um where you take the band and compression, like add compression to your elbow to that, like really really tight compression for a couple of minutes, do some movement through and then undo it. That helped a ton, and can like just simple blood flow can do a lot for certain areas like that. And it's I've done it for my Achilles as well instead of taking ibuprofen or something. What about you?
Yeah, so if I'm in pain, what do I do? I don't do anything. I don't take anything. I mean, I'll do what you're talking about, because I did deal with a lower back issue for a long time. I mean, probably deem that as one of my worst and longest lasting injuries I've had as an athlete. I mean, it's very like crashed my motivation. I couldn't train how I want. Every time I would train, I get hurt again. And now that I'm back, everything feels great. But like, what was I doing during the time frame when I would legitimately be in pain? Like most of the day, like what was I doing? And to be honest, I was just kind of dealing with it. I've kind of lost the logical process of uh chemically
Pills?
like
Yeah.
taking things to get better. To be honest, it's not even like Emily even has to remind me sometimes that that's an option. If I'm like, if my back's like hurting really bad, she would be like, "Why don't you take something?" And she's really anti taking something too. But I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I guess I could." But I just stay away from that for the most part. So I'll do stretching, I'll do sauna, yeah, I'll do blood flow, cold plunge, all of those kind of things. I'll try and do everything else and see if I can get it to like ease off in other ways before I would ever think about taking something. And it's interesting. My brother last summer, he came over to work out, and he's like, I'm just coming over to hang out. He's like, I'll watch you work out. He's like, but I've got a massive headache. There's no way I can train today. But he came over anyway, and I was like, well, let's see what we can do with your headache. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, let's see if we can get rid of it. And so I gave him 16 ounces of water with electrolytes, I had him do the ski erg for I think 10 to 15 minutes at a really low intensity, and then I threw him in the cold plunge for about 3 to 5 minutes, and his headache was gone after all that. And he'd been dealing with a headache for like 8 hours before he came over. And so sometimes I really think that some sort of state shift, like your body, like there's a whole science behind pain. And if you look into that science a little bit, and I haven't a ton, but I think your mind's messing with you a lot more than you might actually be in pain from a signal. Like your body might be telling you, "Hey, we're inflamed in the lower back, like something's off, like it hurts." But sometimes overemphasis on that pain, like from your own mind, like that's all you're thinking about, that's all you allow yourself to think about. I honestly think that it makes issues like that worse. So try and, change your state through any of the ways that I've mentioned. Try to do something different to ease off the pain, but really do whatever you have to not have to take medicine is ultimately what I'm going for.
I'm gonna need somebody to beta test Jared's homeopathic, remedy, see if it works for hangovers as well.
Yeah, I had never even done it for myself. I was like legitimately like I wasn't like, "Hey, I can cure your headache." I was like, "Let's see."
Let's see what happens.
Let's see if this makes it way worse or if it gets better. I don't
what
know.
are what are brothers for?
Yeah, like I was not coming from a place of authority and knowledge there. I was just like, let's try and change your state as in as many ways as I know how. And so let's get in there and it worked. So and I only have one person in one test. I've never tried it again. But if you get a headache, hey, try it out. I'd love to know if I can patent the process or something.
Yeah, I've rarely had headaches during the day that, weren't hangover induced. So that's just hydration and electrolytes, kind of an ordeal.
Well, yeah, if you know why you have the headache, then it's pretty easy to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't that, yeah, I'll smash the area, but I've kind of been ibuprofen averse just like you, and eventually I'll take some unless like if I have an actual like sprained ankle, like I had that not long ago, and I actually took a little bit, but I was still like on the lower end, didn't want to take much. And even my back, I was like really putting off taking it. But if it helped me to actually be able to move and stretch, and because that would be the ultimate goal, to move more. If that's going to help it, if like, okay, if I'm going to take some of these to help it, then that's fine. But just try not to get into a pattern, especially because, like I said, small intestine, it has some not so great effects there. But that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I've just gotten to the point where I don't trust taking anything. That's all. That's also why I'm like, I take supplements, but I wish that I didn't because I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where this is headed long term. I think I'm not saying it's like bad like smoking, but it's like that. It's like everyone thinks it's okay, and we're all just doing it. That was
Yeah,
smoking when it started, and it could be our kids who are like, "You took a whey protein supplement?" Like,
yeah.
damn.
I'm just like 10, 20 years from now, like something's gonna come out about
Yeah.
magnesium, because everybody's taking. Nobody's really been like, oh, you shouldn't take magnesium. It's like, oh, magnesium should be something everybody takes, or well, yeah,
Well, and that's what's hard about any of this stuff is you have to stay so up to date on everything because it all changes. Like if you're spouting off something about magnesium from 2009, all right, well, it's way different now. Like just everything changes all the time. All right, well, let me kind of read the bullet points I have jotted down for this study just to kind of recap, and then we'll talk a little bit about programming coming up because the new cycle is upon us right around the corner. So ultimately, can ibuprofen affect muscle hypertrophy? Two studies showed mixed results, with one indicating that it enhances hypertrophy in older adults and another suggesting that it inhibits hypertrophy in younger adults. The differing findings may be due to differences in inflammatory levels between age groups, as older adults generally have higher levels of inflammation, which could contribute to muscle hypertrophy. However, studies using lower doses of ibuprofen did not show any significant effects on muscle hypertrophy, positive or negative. Meta analytical data did not find a significant difference between the effects of placebo and ibuprofen on muscle hypertrophy in middle aged and older adults. The current understanding of the relationship between ibuprofen use and muscle hypertrophy is still in its early stages, and more research is needed before any conclusive recommendations can be made. So, that is it in summary. Take it how you will. Our ultimate takeaway: do everything you can to not take it, and reduce inflammation. That should just be a goal. Reduce inflammation, improve the immune system, and those things are going to go a lot further than whether or not your biceps get bigger. So work on those things and become a better human for it. All right, I wanted to discuss programming a little bit because I have been working a lot on the hard to kill, the new the new wave, and I kind of want to discuss like my thought process behind it because for the first time ever,
think I'm going to actually look at it while you're, because I haven't even looked at it yet.
well, I mean, we're still following the same format, right? We're following the all the different areas of training that we're trying to hit, but where I'm experimenting and doing something differently, and what I was saying for the first time ever was taking into account where we're at in the year and trying to play into people's natural goals a little bit more of like, hey, we're heading into spring, moving into summer. Like, the people want to look a little bit better during these time frames. And I know we have different tracks, like Shred is a little bit more body comp. But what I did this time was I balanced all the areas how we would normally balance a hard to kill track training cycle, which I've talked about many different times on the podcast and webinars and all this other stuff. But what I did was in our training, we have a major, and the major is like the emphasis of the week. And so a certain number of blocks have to be dedicated to your major in our style of programming. That's the programming methodology that we follow. And the minor and hard to kill is all the other things that balance a human being out. And typically, what we do with the major is something strength related, to be honest, at this point, because there's enough conditioning otherwise. But I split it right down the middle to where half of the major training sessions are going to be relatively grueling strength sessions. And I say grueling because um, you're just going to be, it's going to be like full body from start to finish of these sessions. It'll just be like, all right, we're squatting, we're deadlifting, we're pressing, we're just doing every single thing all in one training session. And then the secondary training session are more of the grunt work style 40-minute EMOMs that I used to program a lot back 2017, 2018, and I'm bringing those back. So a lot of different work and they get harder, progressively harder. So 40-minute EMOMs, if you've never done them, and they're 40-minute conditioning / lifting EMOMs. So there's a lot of conditioning elements, some lifting elements, some body weight gymnastics elements. So that is what we're doing on the hard to kill track. So it's going to be awesome. I'm very proud of this cycle and what I put together on a programming side. So the balancing stuff is the balance. So we're balancing all the other areas, whether it's energy systems or mixed modality training, different strength methods. All those are still there. That's always through every 30-day wave. But where the major is in the hard to kill track is a little bit different than we've done before, and I'm really excited to personally test it out. I'm trying to operate a couple weeks ahead of Garage Gym Athlete, just to be able to do things ahead of time and make sure everything flows and is not too painful, and all the things, going back to being a tester of my own programming, which is fun.
Yeah, I'm actually liking the looks of it. One thing that kind of has a little theme with how I write strength a little bit, but I like things to be a little more simple, or I like my days to so hardcore strength days to where you're just lifting. I like those versus mixing in like kind of too many things. And it's more of just for me thing, just like a mindset, like, yeah, I'm gonna go and lift every day, or yeah, I'm gonna go and hit the conditioning hard today, do a bunch of intervals today. And some people, might find that boring, or they need to be distracted a bit more, but that's just kind of the theme that I like a little bit. So I like that having days that are just like, okay, I know this day I'm going to be doing this. It's going to be just a bunch of EMOMs for 40 minutes. Like I'm just going to set up my four things and I'm going to go back and forth to them for 40 minutes and it's going to be great.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is, so since just talk CrossFit for a second, because I think that CrossFit, as much crap as I talk about it, I feel like CrossFit has always had potential because I like mixed modality training, right? I just feel like it's the high intensity element. And to be honest, the company was trash a few years ago, like when Glassman was around and like all his little minions, like they even attacked me and things that I had written. Um, they didn't spare anyone. And so I started looking recently, like back at CrossFit, not as something I wanted to do, uh, but I wanted to see if the programming methodology had changed because, um, like we're just so far removed from it. And so I've looked at like all the top CrossFit programming sites. I looked at CrossFit.com. I just want to see if anything's changing. And some of it is like I'm starting to see some top CrossFit programming websites throwing in zone two, which is that it just blows my mind because like zone two is the opposite of like the CrossFit methodology, but they're just understanding what good training and good programming is. But what hasn't changed at all, and I find really sad because it doesn't matter which one of these CrossFit programming sites you sign up for, is here's the format. And I'm going to demystify it for you real fast. It doesn't matter who you sign up for, like which athlete that you think you're going to end up looking like, or like whatever, how many CrossFit games they won, or whatever it is. Here's the format: warm up. Okay. What's after warm up? Strength work. Okay. What's after strength work? Metcon. Okay. What's after Metcon? Cool down. That's it. That's all of them. And I seriously looked at all of them, like all the top ones, like 10 different programming sites. And I don't even know why you'd pay for one versus the other. It's like, okay, that's the format. Like we warm up. Then after we warm up, we do strength work. After we do strength work, we do a Metcon. After Metcon, we do a cool down. I'm not saying that won't get you fit or it's ineffective, but it's just so that's where there's been no change. Like that was like programming in my mind, like 2008, 2009, 2010, like when people were first trying to figure like some of this CrossFit in addition to other things. And the way I'm thinking about programming isn't in this single session modality, and it's not even in a 7-day modality. I'm trying to think of programming in a 30-day modality. And that's what I want people to understand is that if you're consistently hitting something like hard to kill training over 30-day time period, you see so much more, and you're seeing it enough to where it's enough stimulus to still make progress. The results of our athletes prove that point. And to your point, it saves the ADD side of we all have, right? Like it can be hard to do the training method that I just mentioned that a lot of top sites, CrossFit sites are doing, where it's like you're using 7 different pieces of equipment, a barbell, a kettlebell, like a sandbag. You have all these different things. Like sometimes that can just wear on your brain when you're like, I'm switching between 4 different things today. There's a lot. Like it's just it can be more difficult. And so I think how we program over this 30-day course is just better. I think it's superior, but it also helps, I think, from a psychological standpoint to where you can be like, cool, 40-minute EMOM today. Then I'm going to cool down with some daily work. Great. Strength, cool. Let's go all in on that. Okay. Am I hitting an energy system today? Awesome. And just it helps you stay in the game for longer. So I think that's a big thing that, I've been thinking a lot more about. We've been this way for a while, but I've been stretching it out further and further because I tried to keep weeks the same and build off. But now I'm like experimenting with the fact that you don't even have to do that. You can be a lot more undulating in your entire programming methodology over the course of 30 days, and not have to do it how any of these guys are doing it and still see phenomenal results. Because another thing that frustrates me with what I've seen across a lot of these programs is we program what we think you need. If I thought that I wouldn't pretend or not program something if you needed it, but I didn't think you had the time. And that's one thing I noticed too when I was looking at these. They'll have like a competitor track, where the programming is like you honestly have to dedicate about 2 hours per day to train. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. Don't worry. Do our 30-minute version or our 60-minute version. And so, yeah, you look at those two, and then all they've done is remove things that they think are important. They're like, take the zone 2 workout. Screw that. We don't need zone 2 anymore. That's out of the program. Even though they know you actually need it, they're really just pandering to the fact that
The
you
masses.
have less time,
Yeah.
and so they don't really care. And then they they shorten the warm up. They're like, in reality, you need a 10 to 15 minute warm up. If I was programming for what I thought you should need, that's what it would be. But you told me you're short on time, 3-minute warm up. Look how easy that was. It's like, well, but I need a 10 to 15-minute warm up. Again, you're just pandering to the fact that I have a small amount of time. And then they do the same with the strength and the Metcon stuff. It's like, okay, this is how much volume I think you actually need in strength to move forward. But you told me you didn't have a lot of time. So we're going to do 2 sets today of strength. When in reality, if I was programming for somebody I wanted to see results for, I would have programmed more strength. And then same with the Metcons. So I just think while they have made some progress, there's still a lot of holes in that methodology. And it's not like it's hurting people or killing people or whatever. It's just, this is something we focus on and something we look at. And so it's a bit frustrating to see. And for anybody out there who's interested in that kind of stuff, you're not missing much. Like, you're not missing much on the other side of the coin. And I don't think that style of programming will win out. I just don't think it won't be what saves the world, as CrossFit would have you believe.
Yeah, I think if you were to do that, I think you still have to balance out and pick whatever major you want to work on and do that on your own, because how they program it, they're going to program usually 6 days a week, but they're not programming thinking that you're going to come every single day. They're thinking that you're going to come 3 to 4 days a week. So like, people aren't consistently coming every day. They're mix matching what days they might come on. So you can't really program a strength cycle if you don't think that you're going to be, or the people are going to be there all those times. So it's like, I'll just put in this strength thing here so that, yeah, you can get some strength work in, but it's not going to be a progression or a linear progression or anything like that. It's just gonna be like, here's some strengths. But if you really want to get strong, you need to actually just do your own strength on the side and then go do whatever other work you want to do. And also realize that with the interference effect, you really only need 24 hours at most, and you're not gonna, there's not gonna be any conflicting benefits. That's why usually within the same day, same training session, it's best to focus on one thing. But for strength wise, if you just do that all separate from your, CrossFit Metcon, then that'll be fine. And that's honestly how I legitimately found one man, one barbell.
Needed more strength work.
Yeah.
And to that point, if you miss, because of how much we spread out over the course of 30 days, if you miss a day on the Garage Gym Athlete program, you're missing a small targeted bit of training that is not going to jack up some periodized, like 7-day, 14-day strength program. You'd be like, oh, I didn't get glycolytic intervals, I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be okay because we have so many other areas that we're working on, either in the strength continuum or conditioning or whatever else. So yeah, all awesome stuff. I'm excited for the Hard to Kill track this next cycle to kick off. I wanted to speak specifically to what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and why I'm excited about it. And that's exactly what I'll be doing into the spring and summer. So I think it's going to be awesome. You have anything else, Joe?
Nope. I haven't quite gotten my strength cycle together, but actually, funny enough, looking at some of the things you had is already some of the things that I was already thinking about for strength. So.
Don't steal my program. Well, we don't need to talk
the type of strength might be the same, but that's about it.
No, I got some good stuff for you. But we'll end it here. If you want to try out the programming and what I'm talking about, go to garagegymathlete.com, sign up for a free trial, hop on the Hard to Kill track if you want to, train specifically what I'm talking about, like what I programmed. It's on the Hard to Kill track this next cycle. But that's it. Thanks for watching or listening. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you. Athlete Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.